The 2010s are about to end in a few hours, and I'm here to give you my decade-end awards for wrestling in the entire decade of the 2010s. So before I get there, I want to talk about the awards. These are mostly the awards I do for the year. They're just doing it for the decade, and there's a lot of differences. You won't see many of the same that you saw in my previous video because there was a lot that happened this whole decade. When you take a whole decade into one as a whole and try to judge it, it's a million times harder than just a year. Because a year, it's pretty easy, actually. We look at who's headlined, who's had some good matches. The entire decade, it's so complicated to do this award because so much changes. I mean, WWE in 2019 is not, it's a lot different from the 2010. You look at the roster, it's almost completely different. So before I get there, I want to talk about who the awards will be in. I've decided I wasn't going to put Japanese wrestling because I haven't watched enough of it. I'm not doing it justice. I've watched most of the Wrestle Kingdoms. I'll watch that in a few days when the next one happens. But I don't really follow New Japan very well, so I can't include it. I'm just going to include mostly WWE and more American wrestling. I love New Japan, just when I don't watch it regularly. I only watch the Wrestle Kingdom, so I won't be in here. We'll just stick to wrestling, American wrestling. A lot of the wrestlers have been in a whole bunch of different companies. To be honest, a lot of the wrestlers in WWE were in Ring of Honor and TNA for a lot of previous parts of the decade, so they won't have trouble getting here. And with that, let's get into it. And actually, before we get to the awards, I want to recap each year, give you my thoughts on each year. So 2010. When you go back to that whole year of 2010, there's not much that happened that year. He had Bret Hart returning at the first few days of the decade on Raw. That was a big story that happened. But the whole year in 2010 was very boring. Raw was a snooze fest. Matches were just not that good. You had Shawn Michaels retiring after WrestleMania 26 when he had the great match with The Undertaker. It wasn't as good as the match the year before in 25, but it was a great match to go out on. He retires the night after Raw. That rest of the year was disappointing because that's when the Nexus storyline happened. When the Nexus attacked John Cena on Raw and they attacked CM Punk when he was under a mask, that was insane. That was some of the best stuff you'd see. I thought that was great. People thought, oh my God, this Nexus, is this going to be another NWO? And then, of course, Daniel Bryan gets fired a couple days after because he chokes Justin Roberts with this tie and that he loses his job over it, which was just awful and stupid. And, of course, the storyline went to hell. John Cena buries the Nexus at SummerSlam in 2010, which was absolute bullshit, pissed everyone off. Nexus never recovered after that, and that was the big thing that happened that year. 2010 was not a very good year. I thought it was pretty boring. Raw, in particular, it was just not entertaining that year. 2011, not a boring year, a year that had a lot of headlines for sure, but that was more of a year that was very hit or miss. 2010 was never really horrible, but never great. Kind of stayed average. 2011 was hit, but some bad misses. To start that year, what did you have? You had the 40-man Rumble, which was actually the biggest Rumble in history. That was noteworthy. Then, of course, when you went to WrestleMania, the big thing was The Rock. He made his big return after 7 years to headline WrestleMania as the guest. That was not main event, but he was the big draw that year, and he sold the biggest WrestleMania buy rate at 27. And, of course, the whole thing there, he had the match with John. He cost John Cena the main event, which, of course, would cost Cena the title, and that would set up the match with John Cena the following year in 28. But yeah, going back to actually talk about the WrestleManias, 26 to go back to 2010 in Phoenix, that was okay. 27 sucked in Atlanta. That show was shit. That was not a good show at all. And after that, the product was really boring. Nothing was happening. And then, of course, June 27th, 2011, CM Punk's pipe bomb, and that literally set the wrestling world on fire. I've never seen Twitter just explode, and everything about Twitter was wrestling. All the trends, when I went on Twitter, I remember that night, I was on my computer right after I had the TV on, I turned on my computer, every fucking tweet was CM Punk. Wrestling sites crashed when CM Punk did that pipe bomb. That was just nuts. And then, of course, the storyline was a disappointment afterwards. But then, of course, you had Money in the Bank, which was one of the best pay-per-views of the decade. One of the best shows they've ever done. One of the all-time great pay-per-views in WWE history. Of course, however, after that, the storyline faded out and ended up being a flop. So that was noteworthy. Then, of course, you had that horrible segment. Everyone walked out on Triple H, and it made the whole roster look like a bunch of pussies. So, and then you had a terrible storyline with Triple H and Kevin Nash, which was embarrassing. 2011. Yeah, it got really hot in the summer of Punk. The summer of Punk was very memorable. The rest of the year, not good. 2012, I thought this was probably one of the better years of the decade. They had some good stuff here. I thought it was decent overall. You had WrestleMania, which was built around The Rock versus John Cena, which was the biggest feud of the decade, the biggest draw in WWE history in terms of a feud. They built it up for a whole year. They built it up really well. You had John Cena really destroying The Rock on the microphone, let's be honest, going into that show in Miami. Then, of course, the show, WrestleMania 28 in Miami, headlined with The Rock and John Cena. And, of course, the other headline was End of an Era, Undertaker versus Triple H, Hell in a Cell with Shawn Michaels, a special guest referee. I thought 28 was a very good show. I thought Rock and Cena was a fun match to watch. I enjoyed it. They tried to make it too much like Rock and Hogan, but I liked it overall. Undertaker, Triple H, and Hell in a Cell was incredible. The end of the era match was brutal. And, of course, the three, Undertaker, Shawn, and Triple H embrace after the match. That was a great moment. So I thought 28 was a good show. I mean, Sheamus destroying Daniel Bryan, that sucked. Everyone hated that. But you had Punk and Jericho was good, too. So I liked that. Rest of the year went downhill really fast. Brock Lesnar made his huge return, which was awesome. That was great, seeing Brock Lesnar make his big return. Night after WrestleMania, he gives John Cena the F5. And they had him lose to John Cena at Extreme Rules, which was a mess. That was such a great match where they had Brock lose. And as the year progressed, you had some boring stuff. To be honest, the stuff with John Laurinaitis sucked out. That dominated the rest of the year. Stuff got good near the end of the year. You had some decent stuff, and there was parts of the year. The whole thing was basically John Cena's fall after the devastating loss to The Rock, and he lost like a lot of big pay-per-view matches that year. So he eventually go to 2013, and that was John Cena's comeback. Also in 2012, I forgot to admit, they fucked Ryback up so bad. That horrible Hell in a Cell match with CM Punk, that was so fucking stupid. They botched Ryback terribly in 2012. Ugh. They fucked that up. And then at 13, you had, you had the show. WrestleMania was built around Rock and John Cena in a rematch. John Cena won the Rumble, and he challenges The Rock. They face at WrestleMania 29 main event. John Cena, with the victory over The Rock, wins the WWE Championship, gets his redemption. That was that show. You had Undertaker and CM Punk steal the show. That was great. Triple H and Brock Lesnar had a horrible match, a horrible feud, to be honest. That feud was so boring. All three of their matches were shit. Then another match again at Extreme Rules, not very good. So WrestleMania 29, I thought was a bad show. Probably one of the weakest WrestleMania of the decade. I thought that was not a good show at all. Boring. All you had was you had just everything. All you had was people, like celebrities there. They had like a billion video packages. The 27 was like that too. And 29 was all in New York, so they had like every celebrity. Pretty sure Donald Trump was inducted into the Hall of Fame. That was a pretty noteworthy thing. And man, you want to talk superstar of the decade, not just wrestling, of the whole, in terms of headlines, Donald Trump. He headlines he was in the Hall of Fame in 2013. Then he went on to do something else. To stick to wrestling. I remember just all it was video packages. It went on forever. That show would never end. They had like a million rappers. Not a fan of that one. The rest of the year got good once the summer of Daniel Bryan happened. In 2013, Daniel Bryan became the hottest wrestler in the company. He was massively over in the summer. He got super over. He broke away from Kane with Team Hell No, which I also mentioned back in 2012. That was a very fun tag team. I liked that a lot. Team Hell No was fun. Then, of course, once they left, he got the big run. He got the huge matchup with John Cena. They set up at SummerSlam. He was massively over. He beats John Cena. Then, of course, Triple H turns on him. He was the referee. Randy Orton cashes in, and the whole thing of Daniel Bryan's yes movement begins. Daniel Bryan, however, is attacked and bitched out on Raw every single night in 2013. Every Raw, they bitched him out with the authority, and everyone had to watch. Of course, it spawned from Triple H, from John Cena against Daniel Bryan to Triple H against the Big Show. It sucked. 2 times it happened. In 2011, hottest storyline was CM Punk versus John Cena that somehow turned into Triple H versus Kevin Nash, and that sucked. 2013, the hottest storyline is Daniel Bryan versus John Cena that somehow turned into Triple H versus the Big Show. Oh, that sucked. 2013, that was horrible. That Survivor Series that year, they had Daniel Bryan get screwed every show. There was some. I mean, Daniel Bryan really was the only thing that made that year memorable, to be honest. The Shield, however, that was the emergence of the Shield. Shield debuted in 2012 to go back to that year. That was another big thing. I forgot. The Shield's big debut in 2012, and then in 2013 they tore the host down with a whole bunch of matches, and they'd continued to tear it down in 2014 before they split up. But before we get there. Then we go to the most noteworthy year of the decade, I think, without question, was 2014. So much happened here. So we start that year. Batista, the big storyline goes back to 2013, actually, as Batista makes his big return in December. And so much happens. So everything was about wrestling. I've never seen the internet so into a storyline as they were in the beginning of 2014. From 2014 to the WrestleMania, that whole period, I'd say from Royal Rumble 2014 to WrestleMania 30, everyone on the internet was talking. That was the most noteworthy part of the decade. So Batista makes his big return. He's hated because he takes Daniel Bryan's spot, and he wins the Royal Rumble that year in 2014, and it was a shit show, the worst Royal Rumble ever in 2014. Maybe only done by the year after that. We'll get to that later. He is despised. The fans booed the hell out of Batista. It's really bad. They can't stand Batista now. He's taking the heat. And not only did he take the heat for Daniel Bryan, he also had to take the heat because something else happened that year, and that was CM Punk walks out of the WWE. He leaves the company, which was a huge surprise. Punk leaves. It was the biggest story. Everyone was talking about CM Punk walking out. It happened in 2014. Walks out of the company. A lot happened. They chanted CM Punk's name every single night on Raw after that. There was the infamous Raw in Chicago, which was crazy. Also, I want to, I remember that show. That was probably one of the most noteworthy Raws. You had the Shield and the Wyatt family have a match. On that show, and I remember the Usos won the tag team title from New Age Yellow, so a lot happened, but they kept teasing CM Punk. He never showed up. So Punk's gone, and the storyline just becomes Daniel Bryan against the Authority. Eventually, Daniel Bryan gets into the main event. It's a triple threat match at WrestleMania 30. And WrestleMania 30, wow, so much happened. Oh, God. I remember the way the show started was awesome with Hulk Hogan, Stone Cold Steve Austin, and The Rock in the middle of the ring. That was such a cool way to start the show. Everyone loved it. They all cut great promos. They were super over. Then, of course, Triple H had probably the entrance of the year. I'm going to give that an award, too. I thought that was so cool. And he had Charlotte, Flair, Sasha Banks, and Alexa Bliss part of his entrance. So that was good, too. That was really cool, an entrance. And, of course, Daniel Bryan comes out. That awesome video package for Daniel Bryan. Daniel Bryan beats Triple H. Great match. And he gets into the main event later. Also on that show, you had John Cena and Bray Wyatt. And Cena shouldn't have won, but had a really good video package, too. And who could forget the Undertaker streak ending? Holy shit, that was crazy. Undertaker streak ending. Oh, my God. I could not believe what happened. I was stunned. I was just shocked beyond belief. I couldn't process it. Like, what the fuck? I had the exact same reaction as the guy, the black guy in the front row, like the shocked face. Holy shit, I could not believe that happened. The most shocking moment of the year. Daniel Bryan, of course, wins the main event of WrestleMania 30, ending a great show, my favorite WrestleMania of the decade by far, easily one of the best WrestleManias of all time, one of the best shows of the decade. I thought that was a great ending. Daniel Bryan gets his big moment. A lot happened on that show. And, of course, the follow-up from that show was notable, too. Paige makes her debut the night after. She beats AJ Lee, a very memorable match, too, a very memorable part. The Ultimate Warrior passed away a couple days later, which was sad as hell. That was just awful. Oh, that was so sad. And everyone was talking about wrestling, and of course they had the emergence of the Shield. Later as the year progressed, the Shield breaks up, shocking turn. Seth Rollins turns on Roman Reigns and Dean Ambrose. He's absolutely hated when he does that. They chant "You sold out." Rollins turns on him. Infamous segment on Raw. And I thought the first half of the year, I thought the period of WrestleMania, the road to it, until like the first half of the year was really good. The second half of the year was fucking abysmal. Show sucked. You had Brock Lesnar killing John Cena at SummerSlam that year, 2014. That was memorable. The rest of the show fell off a cliff. The rest of the year, The Bella Twin stuff was fucking abysmal. The fall of that year was unbelievably terrible. The Authority embarrassing everyone because Daniel Bryan had to relinquish the belt and everything was bad. John Cena and feuding with Lesnar, and Brock wouldn't show up for 5 months. That's when that really started. That pissed everyone off. He would never be on TV. All of 2014, man. The rest of that year sucked. He had Sting, however, make his big debut at Survivor Series that year. That was very memorable, seeing Sting. That was a cool moment. But the stuff with the Bellas, of course, that awful segment on Raw with Seth Rollins and Edge, and John Cena and John. That year ended really bad. That was rough, the way 2014 ended. 2015 started off horrendous. The Authority is on the TV every fucking week. They were so fucking bad. The stuff with Triple H and Stephanie. That stuff was awful. The stuff with the Bellas, Nikki's reign would never end that year. Stuff got really bad too. They added Big Show and Kane to it. Okay, eventually you had the Royal Rumble that year, and the same thing happens. Everyone wanted Daniel Bryan to win the Rumble that year. Same thing as 2014. He doesn't win the Rumble. That was a fucking shit show. 2015 Rumble sucks. Roman Reigns wins it, and that begins the fans despising Roman Reigns. They boo him at every show, and that's when it all began. Rumble 2015. It all starts there. That's where it all began. They booed him in Philadelphia. The year before was Pittsburgh, so both Pennsylvania destroyed the Rumble. First, Pittsburgh hated it in 14, and Philly's worse than Pittsburgh. They ruined it all. 2014 was fun because the fans were like making chants and stuff. They kept chanting for Daniel Bryan. They were having fun with it. And in 2015, man, Philly hated it. They were so mad. All you heard was boos. That was a disaster. That Rumble was so bad. Of course, the fans hate Roman Reigns. The worst build-up ever to WrestleMania was WrestleMania 31. The build-up to Brock and Roman was awful. The tug-of-war to end. The Triple H Sting build-up was not very good. I thought that was boring. The Bray Wyatt Undertaker stuff, Undertaker won't show up. A lot of Daniel Bryan gets nothing. He just gets in a ladder match. But then WrestleMania 31 show happens. It ends up being a great WrestleMania, almost as good as 30. I thought the wrestling was actually better than 30, but I thought as a show I like 30 better, but 31 was very close. I think you can go those two neck and neck as the best WrestleManias of the decade. It's funny, like both those years are kind of intertwined. They each had two horrible Royal Rumbles, but they both had two great WrestleManias. I love 31. Bryan wins the Intercontinental title start. That was good. The Orton Rollins had a good match. The Triple H Sting stuff was a fun segment. You had a lot of cool entrances that year too. I thought the Rusev entrance with the Russians was awesome. Triple H's Trump entrance was a bit too cheesy. And of course, the Brock Lesnar Roman Reigns match was fantastic. It was a fantastic main event. Seth Rollins, the big cash in, the heist of the century, cashes in Money in the Bank 1, 2, 3, pins Roman Reigns, an insane moment. The fans lost their minds. Awesome ending to WrestleMania. It was in San Francisco that year, actually San Jose. It was a cool segment too. It was set too. I thought 2015 was a great Mania. I enjoyed it a lot. However, it went downhill from there. The rest of the year was fucking horrendous. The stuff with Roman Reigns and the Big Show, and the fans kept chanting, "Please retire" to the Big Show the whole year. That stuff was awful. That was bad. That stuff sucked. Oh man, that show, that summer was just awful. And you had, I think AJ Lee retired that year. That was a big story too. She retired. Then of course the rest of the year was, you had the big women's evolution, Charlotte, Sasha, and Becky all debut on the same show together. And it was just a disaster the way it started. The whole 3 versus 3 versus 3, Bellas versus PCB versus Team Bad. That stuff was bad. That stuff was horrible. SummerSlam that year, Undertaker and Brock was pretty good. But, man, the rest of that year, man, the Survivor Series of 2015 was fucking horrendous. That was so bad. So 2015 sucked. That was a shit year. You had the infamous storyline with Paige and Charlotte, or Paige mentioned Charlotte's dead brother. That was not good. So 2016, notable year. So he had AJ Styles make his debut at the Royal Rumble, which was so awesome. At the 2016 Rumble, he makes his big debut. It was insane. The fans lost their minds. I thought he was surprised. I don't know. I thought he probably thought, oh man, fans aren't going to know me. They knew who he was, and they went nuts for AJ in 2016 at the Rumble. That was such an awesome debut. The rest of that year, you had Shane McMahon make an amazing return on Raw in Detroit, which I wanted to go, but I did not. I really regret not going. Really regret that. Oh, man, it was such a cool moment. It was Detroit. It was close to me. I could have gone. I did not. And, of course, he has that awesome return. It sets up the feud with The Undertaker, which was a great build-up. The Hell in a Cell, he has the big spot. He jumps from the top of the cage through the table at WrestleMania 32 that year, but the match was not very good. WrestleMania 32, the build-up to that, not a good show. Probably one of the weaker WrestleManias of the decade. Just a badly booked show. Pissed everyone off that show. I remember just the way they booked it. They had AJ Styles lose to Jericho. Made no sense. You had... the New Day lose when they were over, and they had Austin and Foley and Michaels beat up the League of Urinations. Oh, I forgot to mention them. They came in 2015. They were awful, League of Urinations. Oh, they sucked. Oh my God, they were bad. A lot of bad stuff. You had Dean Ambrose get his ass kicked by Lesnar. He had Sasha Banks. Everyone wanted to see her win the title in a triple threat match with Charlotte and Becky. And she was the most over of those three, but they gave it to Charlotte. Everyone wanted Sasha, and that pissed people off. Taker Shane was fun, but the match, the big spot was fun, but like the match before it, they had in the cage was not good. You had Shaq on that show, remember? Triple H Roman Reigns was a shitty main event. So 32 was not a good show. You had Roman get the big moment, but the match sucked. Going after that was actually the biggest WrestleMania of all time. It was in Dallas, Texas, at AT&T Stadium. It had 100,000 people, but the show itself was disappointing. They should go back and do a better show. They owe it to the fans. Rest of the year, it was not good. You had Ambrose win the title at Money in the Bank. That was a great moment when he won it from Rollins after Rollins made his return. That was cool. Of course, it was notable. They split up the brands. They had Raw and SmackDown, and they did the second roster split. That was a big moment. They did the draft on Raw. Drafted a whole bunch of wrestlers. They brought in they brought in a lot of people from NXT. They brought Alexa Bliss. She was notable. She made her debut on SmackDown. Finn Balor came up. So he had some stars that came up from that. Balor got the Universal title. Of course, he gets hurt at SummerSlam in 2016. That was a shit show, too, because Balor gets hurt. And, of course, you had Brock Lesnar almost kill Randy Orton in the main event. So, that was a disaster, that show. Rest of the year, Goldberg makes his big return, and he destroys Brock Lesnar. That was great at Survivor Series 2016. You had Charlotte Sasha had that disaster Hell in a Cell match. But they had a great feud that year, but the Hell in a Cell match they had was a disaster. Rollins and Owens were champ. And Owens was him and Jericho were very entertaining when they were the duo. You had Donald Trump win the election that year in 2016. That was notable, too. I mean, not wrestling, but hey, he did win the presidency. That was crazy and rad stuff. That was nuts. The one thing I remember, though, that year started off with a huge headline. It was AJ Styles, Shinsuke Nakamura, and Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson all signed to WWE, which is a big story. So we had some stuff that year. At the end of the year... they split up the brand. SmackDown was great in 2016. SmackDown was fantastic. Raw sucked. SmackDown was good. Everyone loved SmackDown and hated Raw. 2017, not a very memorable year. You had some stuff. You had the Raw and SmackDown split in full effect. SmackDown went downhill. You had the horrendous title reign of Jinder Mahal. But as that year started, the Rumble that year was in San Antonio. Where it was in the Ambledon. It was a stadium show. You had Roman Reigns make his big return, which was a disaster in the Rumble. I mean, he didn't make his return, he came out as number 30, and that was a disaster. Well, he didn't win, Orton won, but man. The build-up for WrestleMania that year was not good. It was a makeshift card. However, the best stuff was John Cena and Nikki Bella against The Miz and Maurice. Not the match, but the build-up to the match was fantastic. That stuff was really entertaining. It was really good, no doubt about it. You had... that show you had in WrestleMania in Orlando, Florida, the Citrus Bowl, the actually Camping World Stadium. Second time they've done it there. The first time was 24. Okay, that was like the giant roller coaster, so it was like the ultimate thrill ride. WrestleMania, when it called 33, the ultimate thrill ride. You had a really cool roller coaster set. The giant had the best WrestleMania set of all time. It was like WrestleMania with the Disney logo, the Universal logo, which was awesome. The best set ever, which was the roller coaster, and you had another ride at the end. You had a giant ramp, which was 80 yards long. That was such a cool set. Show itself was okay. You also had a miniature ring at the top, so they spent so much on that show. The actual show, it started off, we had AJ and Shane had a good match to start the show. New Day were the host that year, remember that. Owens Jericho was okay. The Fatal 4-Way women's match with Charlotte, Sasha, Bayley, and Nia, not very good. The Hardy Boys making a return was awesome. That was great. John Cena and Nikki beat Miz and Maurice, and Cena proposes to Nikki. That was memorable. Rollins and Triple H had a boring match. Orton Wyatt was awful. Brock and Goldberg had a lot of fun. That match was awesome. It was a lot of fun to watch. I thought that was great. The SmackDown said it was not good. Undertaker, Roman Reigns, the main event. Undertaker retires. So the big thing coming out of WrestleMania 33 was Undertaker's retirement, which did not hold. Of course, Undertaker had an amazing ending, though. It was a great ending. He went off in smoke. They lowered him to the floor, through the ramp. That was really cool. And ends with the show going all black, all dark. But that was a memorable moment and did not hold. John Cena proposing to Nikki Bella. They broke up a year later. That did not hold. And the third thing was the Hardy Boys return, and everyone wanted to see the deletion, the delete. They ended up just being the old Hardys, and they botched that badly. So a lot happened that year, but it didn't hold. But that was a memorable show in terms of things, memorable stuff that happened. The rest of the year, Jinder Mahal has the worst title reign of all time. That was awful. What else happened? On Raw, Braun Strowman had a good run. He got over big time. AJ Styles was fantastic that year, had great matches. Stuff was boring. You had Alexa had a good run too, though. She was definitely the best female wrestler that year. The SummerSlam of that year was okay. It was in Brooklyn. Most memorable actually was the NXT would always be better than WWE. They'd have NXT would always deliver and Raw would not. NXT started in 2014 with Arrival, and that was great. Then they had TakeOver, and it progressed through. And I think in 2015 in Brooklyn, that's when they really went into new stride when they had that show. So NXT would always outperform WWE on shows that did go before them. As 2017 progressed, stuff was kind of boring on Raw. It was kind of boring in the summer. He had the Money in the Bank debacle with James Ellsworth. That stuff was shit. You can go back and watch my reviews. The stuff with Shane and KO. Shane almost kills himself again, jumping from the cage. You had the Survivor Series Raw versus SmackDown. That was okay. So there was some stuff. It was not a bad year, just not a memorable year. 2018 was kind of a snooze fest in terms of Raw. Raw was horrendous that year. The year started off on a good note, though. You had the Rumble. The big story was Ronda Rousey making her grand debut for the WWE. Which was really good at the Rumble. And the Rumble that year had the first Women's Rumble. The woman had a great main event at the end. And the Rumble was a fun match. So the Men's Rumble was also great with Nakamura winning. That was in Philadelphia. They got some redemption. As that year progressed, though, you had some stuff they didn't like and the build-up to WrestleMania. It wasn't the greatest build-up ever, to be honest. Brock and Roman, no one wanted to see that. Everyone wants to see AJ Nakamura, but they did not deliver, unfortunately. That show, WrestleMania 34 in New Orleans, they couldn't live up to 30. The stuff they had, it started off really good with the triple threat match with Rollins, Miz, and Balor. You had Charlotte and Asuka have a fantastic women's match. Charlotte ends the streak. Second time a streak ends in that same stadium. You had Ronda Rousey make her grand debut. It was her and Kurt Angle against Triple H and Stephanie. That stuff was great. I like the Ronda-Stephanie storyline. That was entertaining. Ronda submits Stephanie, gets a huge win. You had AJ Nakamura did not deliver, unfortunately, on that show. It was a very disappointing match. Alexa and Nia was no good. That storyline was not very good. I remember just kind of being underwhelmed with that show, to be honest. Undertaker kills John Cena. Some people like that, but the actual match was whatever. I don't think he needed to do that. And, of course, Brock Lesnar and Reigns have a horrible main event. The rest was not good. Brock, they went to Saudi Arabia. They started the controversial Saudi Arabia stuff, and the whole thing with Khashoggi happened later in that year. The summer was not good that year. The SummerSlam that year, Not a very memorable show at all. Not a very good show. It was Brock and Roman and that whole mess. And Braun Strowman won Money in the Bank. They could never do anything good with him. The show kind of fell off. The year was just okay. The fall that year, Raw destroyed SmackDown at Survivor Series. Not too many headlines. Ronda was fun, but like she never really lit the world on fire in WWE like she did in the UFC. You had the stuff, of course, the big thing that year was Evolution was good. With the woman had the first pay-per-view, and of course the rise of Becky Lynch. That was the big storyline. Nia Jax punches Becky. Becky has a broken nose. She's bloody on Raw. The visual of the year. Becky Lynch goes on to become the biggest star in the company. So I think 2018 was the year of the man, even though she did more the following year in 2019. But that's where Becky got super over. Of course, the feud with Charlotte was fantastic. Had that fantastic match, Evolution. That stuff was good. So the woman stuff with the woman was fantastic that year. The woman outshined the men in 2018. But overall, as a year, it was just okay. There was some stuff that were boring, but the fall was more entertaining than most of the other parts of the year. And this past year, you can look back at my review to give my thoughts on the year. I gave a lot of it. To go back quickly, Becky, of course, was the big star. The stuff at the Rumble was fun. It was a fun Rumble in Phoenix. Becky won the Rumble. Seth wins the Rumble. So both the couples won the Rumble. Going back, just thinking about it, the Ronda Charlotte Becky stuff was a disappointing build up. They didn't build it up right. The stuff on Raw at the end with the car and Charlotte kneeing Ronda in the face was funny, but they didn't build that up right. Going into WrestleMania, that was the main event. It was not a great match. It was okay. Just an okay main event. Becky wins the belt, so Becky 2 belts is a thing. She beats Ronda and Charlotte in the main event. The rest of that year, you had Alexa Bliss as the host with Hulk Hogan to start. That was a fun opening. And, of course, Seth kills Brock Lesnar to start the show. That was entertaining. Shane McMahon and AJ and The Miz have a fun matchup. The Orton and Styles had a match that was ruined by a big light. You had Sasha Banks and Bayley lose the tag team titles to the Iconics in a 4-way tag. And, of course, Sasha Banks left the show. She quit the company for a while. People thought that. I don't know what was happening, but Sasha left. That was a big story, too, for a while this past year. You had Kofi Mania, which was great. Kofi wins the belt from Daniel Bryan. Fantastic storyline. That stuff was great. The Kofi build-up was great going into this year. I forgot to mention that. That was great. Then the rest of the show, up until the main event, kind of fell off a cliff. Corbin Angle was a disaster. Triple H with Batista was no good. Not a good return for Big Dave. Stuff, it was kind of a forgettable show. Lashley, Balor. I think I'm missing something else. So the show was okay. There was some fun stuff. I'd say it was decent overall, but not a great show. I thought it could have been great. Also, I forgot to mention Roman Reigns was diagnosed with leukemia in 2018. I forgot to mention that. And, of course, he would make his grand return on Raw this past year in Atlanta. That was a great moment when he came back. That was obviously very sad. That stuff was awful. Seeing the Shield after that, man, that was really bad. But he made his return. As a year progressed, not too much happened that was notable. The summer sucked. The summer was awful. It was horrendous. Summer was all building up. And, of course, AEW made their announcement. Of course, they would become a company. They went on the air with Dynamite. They had some good stuff this year. NXT would go head-to-head with them every week. And, of course, SmackDown's big move to Fox was a huge story. SmackDown's on Fox now on Fridays. So there was some stuff that was entertaining. SummerSlam was okay. It was just it was an okay show this year from Toronto. Survivor Series was pretty good. I thought this year's Survivor Series was good. It was in Chicago, I believe. NXT was fantastic, as it always is. Also, I want to mention 2018. I forgot to mention this, the awesome Gargano Ciampa stuff. And to go back to NXT, I want to give some stuff. 2014 NXT was great. I like the stuff with Sami Zayn, his story with Neville. I'm just going to go back to all of NXT now since TakeOver. The first arrival is really when they got it on the network. The launch of the network's another big story. I missed that, man. A lot of stuff happened. But of course, that stuff was fun. That year was a good show. I liked Paige had a good year that year in NXT with Emma. That was a fun storyline. There was some stuff that year I liked. Charlotte, Natalia. 2015 was great. You had Balor debut, and of course that was when they signed Balor, Owens, and Hideo Itami. Some of the stuff there was entertaining. and of course the Brooklyn that year with Bailey Sasha, that was fantastic. 2016 was entertaining as well, but I thought that was probably one of the weaker years because that's when all of NXT's roster was gutted for the draft that year. 2017, another great year, of course, the emergence of Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa. Ciampa turns on him, that leads to an amazing feud in 2018, which was the feud of the year, one of the best feuds of the decade. And 2019 was under great stuff, headlined by the Undisputed Era with Adam Cole. So a lot of stuff happened. 2019's over. Year ended. Awful storyline to end the show. To end the decade on Raw we saw last night. That was awful. But let's get now to my awards. I'm sorry for my long recap. I wanted to recap the entire decade because you get this chance once every 10 years. Am I probably going to be doing videos in 10 years? No. I had a chance to review the whole decade's over. 2010's are over. Let's get into my awards now. I want to get into the worst awards before I get to the best awards. There's a lot to talk about, some of the worst stuff. So I usually start with best, I want to start with the worst so I can get through some of these. Worst male wrestler of the decade goes to Baron Corbin. He's been horrendous. He's awful on TV. I hate him. He's the worst male wrestler of the decade. The worst female wrestler of the decade is easy. That goes to Eva Marie. They want to give her the big push. They want her to be the top female star. Thank God it didn't happen. She had some failure career as a movie star. She was horrendous. Thank God that did not last very long. Worst headline of the year, that goes to Hulk Hogan's racist tape in 2015. That was really bad. It was really embarrassing for the company. It set up really bad stuff for Hogan. He was fired for it. That was not good. Worst feud of the decade, the Bella Twins in 2014. The infamous, I wish you died in the womb. And like 2 weeks later, fans were taking pictures of them at a restaurant. That was so bad. Oh, and that was really bad. That storyline was shit. And it was involved after it was a good storyline that started because Stephanie and Brie was a fun storyline that year in 2014, but Nikki turns on Brie in that match, and that was a disaster. Worst match of the decade, this is a tie. You have a double-way tie. I'm sorry for cheating. You have the 2014 and the 2015 Royal Rumble matches. Both of those were fucking dog shit. They sucked. 2014, Batista wins the Rumble. That was a disaster in Pittsburgh. Fans hated everything about that match. Daniel Bryan gets screwed. Everyone wanted to see Daniel Bryan win. He lost to Bray Wyatt early in the show, and everyone thought he was going to come out later to get the win. He does not come out. Then, of course, the 2015 Rumble was a bigger disaster. Roman Reigns, and man, I saw a guy get booed. The Rock makes his return to help Roman Reigns, and The Rock gets booed. Daniel Bryan was eliminated early by Bray Wyatt, so twice in a row he gets screwed by Bray Rumble. But Roman Reigns wins, and Kane and Big Show are embarrassing everyone. They embarrassed Ziggler, they embarrassed Dean Ambrose, and they embarrassed Wyatt. They pick him up like kids and throw him over the top rope. And Kane and Big Show at the end of Roman. Oh, and they turn on each other. That stuff was so bad. Oh, that stuff was awful. Both those matches are fucking abysmal. The Rock gets booed at the end, trying to help Roman, and The Rock's stunned. Man, that was a disaster. 2015 and 2014, both those Rumbles were the worst matches of the decade. Fuck both those matches, they were shit. Worst pay-per-view of the decade, Crown Jewel 2018. This was mirrored with controversy, the whole stuff with Khashoggi in Saudi Arabia. Not good. And of course, Shawn Michaels makes his grand return to have a tag team match, Triple H and Shawn Michaels against The Undertaker and Kane. When Kane was elected mayor that year, Mayor Glenn, Undertaker, and Kane were horrible in that match. They couldn't move. Shawn tried to work, but it was awful. And Triple H tears his pec. Horrible main event, a horrible show. We had that greatest cup stuff with Shane McMahon. We had to hear the best in the world for a whole year after that. Oh, that was bad. 2018 and Crown Jewel that year, that was the worst pay-per-view of the year. That was fucking awful. That show sucked. Worst show of the decade is Monday Night Raw. Show sucks everywhere. Ever since they went to 3 hours. It started off in 2012. Remember they had I think it was the first time they went to 3 hours was when they did the whole the Raw anniversary, or the Raw 1000 in 2012. They went to 3 hours. And I also want to mention, I forgot to mention in 2018, the big thing there was also the Raw 25. Raw 1000 and Raw 25 were the two biggest Raws of the decade. I forgot to mention in 2018 they did Raw 25. That was a fun show in New York, but Raw 1000, that was it was a fun show, but it started off the 3 hour show, and that just, it was painful. So Raw, ever since it was a 3 hour, it sucked. And the first couple of years it sucked too, but 3 hour stuff and some of the storylines with the Authority, recently with Baron Corbin, Raw was not good. The worst show of the decade by far. Worst storyline of the decade also belongs to Raw. That's going to the anonymous Raw GM in 2011. It was a fun storyline. It got so big that it even had the anonymous Raw GM at WrestleMania that year, turning the lights off. But Nothing happened with it. The fact that it was like the reason it happened is the worst time. It wasn't like it was the worst stuff. It was the biggest central figure in the entire storyline. Have you ever seen something that is so big on wrestling that doesn't get a payoff? Now there's payoffs that are shit, that suck. They refuse to give us the payoff. The anonymous Raw GM, I won't forget about that ever. That was such a disappointment. Nothing happened. They just forgot about it. Oh, that was bad. Worst storyline of the decade by far. That sucked. Ugh. Yeah, so they paid it off a year later with Hornswoggle under the ring. That was bad, but now let's get to the good stuff. My year-end awards for the best of. We can get rid of the worst of. Worst of are now over. We can get to the best of. Male wrestler of the decade. This is going to Daniel Bryan. He was fantastic this decade. He made his debut in 2010 on Nexus, on NXT actually, with NXT. And of course, he was fired with the Nexus stuff. That was crazy that year. And of course, they bring him back at SummerSlam. He got really over because he's getting this award because of what he did in 2014. I'm not sure I've seen someone get over as much as he was in the build-up to WrestleMania that year. His journey to WrestleMania was fantastic. He wins. He gets screwed out of winning the Royal Rumble, and the fans go nuts. The fans force him into the match. CM Punk walks out, but they force him into the match. He gets into the main event. He has a great match at Triple H, and of course, he gets the amazing moment winning the WrestleMania main event. He was massively over. And, of course, he wins the main event. That was fantastic. Then, of course, he gets hurt. He comes back. He has to relinquish himself, but he comes back. He wins the Intercontinental at WrestleMania 31. And, of course, he is out. He gets hurt. He gets kicked by Sheamus, and he's out for a year. Eventually, he retires in one of the most amazing segments and sad segments. It was an amazing segment on Raw in 2016. He announces his big retirement. The fans are sad. People are crying. He, however, fights for his career. He comes back. 2 years later in 2018, he's cleared to wrestle. He makes his grand return. Wow, that stuff was fun. He had so much headlines that year. It's like every single thing he did, like there was just so much crazy shit. His big return, of course, his great run as the heel, as the environmental heel. He was also great earlier in the decade with the stuff with Kane, and he was a great heel and a great babyface. He was entertaining as hell as a heel. Both great. And of course, he was the best babyface you could have had the whole decade. The stuff with WrestleMania that year. The Yes Movement, WrestleMania, that was so much fun. I thought he was so entertaining. He made wrestling really fun that year. So I thought he's the best wrestler of the decade. He missed 3 years, but other honorable mentions, however, I would also give to that would come close for John Cena. He had a good decade. Just we never saw him for the last 3 years. AJ Styles was fantastic. It's just the stuff in TNA to start was not good, but he was a close second to this. He could have got this award. When he came to WWE, the 4 years he's had, he's been great. He was a close second. CM Punk was great too, but of course, he was there only like 4 years. I mean, he left. He's been gone. He was great for the decade. 4 years he was there, but he left. Seth had a good decade as well. I'll give it to him. He's up there. The Miz, he was entertaining actually this decade on the mic. I thought he was entertaining, but some wrestlers I would give it to. I thought Daniel Bryan overall, he has to get it. Female wrestler of the decade goes to Charlotte Flair. Now, some people might want to give it to Becky. I thought Becky is the bigger star than Charlotte. She got more over in her, and of course, she got the award the last 2 years. I'm just going to go body of work. It has to go to Charlotte. We're going to count everything before 2015 doesn't count. Nothing counts. AJ Lee, actually, she was very entertaining. She's up there, too. She's a close second. Becky Lynch absolutely is a runner-up. She's been great. Asuka's a runner-up. Bayley's a runner-up. Sasha Banks is close there, too. She is right up there. She had some good matches. I thought Paige was good. I thought Alexa Bliss was very good. Maybe her not the best in ring, but, in terms of being over, she got very over. So there were some people who had good decades for sure. Natalya, she was good in parts. I thought Charlotte, just her whole body of work was great. The match with Natalya at that TakeOver show, the match with Sasha Banks on another TakeOver, the Fatal 4 Horsewoman match. Then, of course, she had a great feud with Sasha in 2016. They had great matches. They had great matches on Raw that were entertaining. She had a great match with Bayley on Raw when she lost the title. Then she would have very good matches. She had a great match with Natalya to win the SmackDown Women's title. She won the title 8 times. Great matches with Becky in 2018, the Feud of the Year. That was fantastic. The matches they had were ridiculously great. The Evolution match was amazing, made them both stars. And of course, in 2019, she also had very good matches. She made events at WrestleMania. I thought her whole body of work. I mean, Becky was great the last couple of years. If you're just going to count 2 years, I'd go to Becky. But whole body of work, Becky wasn't used as much. I thought Charlotte was great she had great matches. I think she's the best worker. And she had a great match with Asuka too at WrestleMania. So I'm going to give it to her. She's the female wrestler of the decade. Tag team goes to the Usos. Tag team of the decade. They were really good. Great matches with the New Day. They were close with the New Day. You could have gone either one. I want the Usos because they're a team. The New Day are, I think, more of a faction, but the Usos as a team, I think they had great matches with a lot of teams, especially the New Day, but I thought they were really great as a team. They had some problems, of course, but I still think they were well done. Faction of the decade. Faction, stable, whatever you want. This is going to be a landslide if you had to vote. These guys are doing the landslides. The Shield, fantastic debut in 2012. They go on to have great matches. Of course, they had the big breakup in 2014, but they put them back together. Those guys are so over, and the fact that all 3 of them went on to become big stars just guarantees that Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, Dean Ambrose. Awesome faction. It was fantastic. Loved the Shield. Those guys were great. The split was memorable, and of course the reunion was good too. So the Shield easily, without question, the best faction of the decade. Brand of the decade added this. The nominees are Raw, SmackDown, or NXT. NXT's been fantastic the whole decade. Those guys are great. I love NXT. Without question, best show of the decade, best brand of the decade, without question. Match of the decade, if I included New Japan, I would go to them, but I'm just going to stick to American wrestling. My favorite match of the whole decade, I'm going to go with John Cena versus CM Punk for Money in the Bank 2011. That whole storyline was great. I thought that show, Money in the Bank, was fantastic that year. I loved Money in the Bank 2011. I'd go back and watch it a whole bunch of times. But that main event, man, it was so epic. It was just a war. It was so exciting. Of course, CM Punk winning, and he wins the title. He leaves WWE in storyline. He gives it to McMahon to kiss goodbye, leaves in the crowd of Chicago. That stuff was so awesome. It's my favorite match of the decade. Feud of the decade goes to The Rock versus John Cena. In terms of selling stuff, I thought that feud was great. I thought the storyline was great. I thought the promos were great. I thought they built it up really well, the best they could. And I enjoyed it. The match itself wasn't the greatest, but I thought the way it was built up was really well done. I thought the storyline was great. That counts for the first year. The second year, I wouldn't really count. I thought the year, I'd go by, since Rock came back from 2011 to the WrestleMania 28 match was great. The 29 build-up was okay. The stuff when John Cena teased turning heel was good, but I thought that, I still think that was my favorite feud of the decade, Rock versus Cena. Promo of the decade, this is going to be a landslide victory. Who else? What other promo is going to win? CM Punk's pipe bomb from Monday Night Raw on June 27, 2011. Punk's pipe bomb was insane. I recapped it earlier. It was crazy. All of Twitter blew up. Everyone was shocked. They couldn't believe it. I thought it was real. It was real, but it was also like a work shoot. It was a work. They told me you could see what he wanted, and what he did was nuts. That was just ridiculous. That was crazy. I go back and watch it, just seeing the reactions. That was nuts. That was crazy. It was awesome too. Draw of the decade goes to John Cena. Definitely the biggest star of the decade. Brings him a lot of money. He's without question the biggest draw. He was hated. They loved him, they hated him. But in terms of a draw, hey, look at the merchandise he sells. He's the biggest draw they've had in that whole decade. Now, through the decade, I'm going to go with Mauro Ranallo. I liked his work overall the most. Jim Ross never really saw much this decade. Lawler's not good in the decade. Cole's not good. JBL was horrible. But I liked Mauro. I thought he was very good. Of course, he also Corey Graves is an idiot too. Forgot to mention that. Debut of the decade, AJ Styles at the Royal Rumble in 2016. That was nuts. That was such an awesome debut. I loved that. That was so much fun. That was so great when he came out and he got that huge reaction. He loved it. Starline of the decade goes to Daniel Bryan's road to WrestleMania at WrestleMania 30. The build up to there, Daniel Bryan versus The Authority. That was great. I thought Daniel Bryan's storyline was great. He gets what he wanted, what the fans wanted to see him win was winning the main event at WrestleMania. They capped it off great. I thought that was great. So the yes move at Daniel Bryan's road to WrestleMania. That's the storyline of the year. Headline of the year. This is easy. The end of The Undertaker's WrestleMania streak at WrestleMania 30. The 21-1. Brock Lesnar defeats The Undertaker. So that show is very memorable. It was nuts. I couldn't believe it happened. I was stunned. I was just shocked. I was in a state of shock. The most shocking moment of the decade, one of the most shocking moments of WrestleMania history, seeing the Undertaker lose his streak to Brock Lesnar. I couldn't believe they ended it. No one thought Brock would end it too. It was just nuts. Pay-per-view of the decade, WrestleMania 30. I just mentioned those two things. Daniel Bryan's storyline and the Undertaker streak ending. Those two itself, that was such a headline of a show. It was such a memorable show. It wasn't the best wrestling show. I thought Money in the Bank at 2011 was probably a better wrestling show. But I thought in terms of overall WrestleMania, I loved watching. And go to 3. I thought just being a WrestleMania and being more memorable, it's going to get more bonus points. I enjoyed the show overall. It's my favorite personally. It may not have been the best wrestling show, but in terms of watching it, I thought that was such a fun show to watch. Of course, the opening stuff with Hogan, Austin, Rock, that was great. The video package, Daniel Bryan's video package was good. The John Cena one was good. You saw Sasha, Charlotte, Alexa actually make their debut on the main roster aired. I thought that was a hell of a show. I thought 30 was my favorite pay-per-view. NXT TakeOver the decade goes to NXT TakeOver New Orleans. This was the best TakeOver without question. This was fantastic. You had Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa kill themselves in the main event. Fantastic main event with Gargano beating Ciampa. It was a great storyline. The storyline was just insane. Feud was great. Match was great. He had an insane ladder match to start, which was fucking insanity. It was just brutal. Those guys killed each other to win the North American title. Adam Cole won. You had Roderick Strong turning heel to join the Undisputed Era, which was another awesome moment in a tag team match. You had Baszler win the NXT Women's title, and I think you had Aleister Black Andrade, and that was fun. That was actually Andrade and Zelina Vega. She was involved in that match, and Aleister was actually with Zelina. It's kind of funny. I thought it was kind of ironic. If they ever do a storyline, they could have that big turn. That was a great show. TakeOver New Orleans is my favorite TakeOver without question. Comeback of the decade, return of the decade, whatever you want to call it. Brock Lesnar returns in 2012. That was huge. That was a great return. Come on, that when he came back was such a big deal because Brock had been gone for 8 years. When Brock returned on Raw and he gives John Cena the F5, that was crazy. That was a great return. I thought that was my favorite return of the decade. Probably one of the biggest storylines of the decade too was Brock Lesnar return. And of course, he had such a big impact. He became the top guy basically for the next 7 years. So his return was very noteworthy. Theme song of the decade, I'm going to go with CM Punk's theme song, which was Cult of a Personality by Living Colour. That was great. I love that theme song. Great theme song. Great song, too. It's not really a theme. It's more of a song, but hey, I think it's great. Catchphrase of the decade goes to yes, yes, yes. Daniel Bryan, the most over catchphrase area ever. He's easily going to take it. No one's coming close. That's Daniel Bryan wins that in a landslide. You're kidding me? Easily the best catchphrase. Year of the decade in terms of headlines goes to 2014. So much happened that year. It was nuts. CM Punk's walking out, Daniel Bryan getting the big push, Undertaker streak ending, the Ultimate Warrior passing away, which was a shock. That year, NXT's big rise, Brock killing John Cena in the main event, the Shield breaking up, which was a shock. So a lot happened that year. Sting's debut with the WWE, that was big. A lot happened in terms of not necessarily wrestling, just headlines. That was crazy. Just so much happened. Babyface of the year of the decade actually goes to Daniel Bryan, without question. And heel of the decade goes to one person. Actually, persons. WWE Creative is the heel of the decade, without question. Without question, they're the heel of the decade. So that wraps it up. That's my Decade End Awards. Long video. Hopefully you stuck with me. A lot to talk about. It's a whole decade ending. You have to do a long video for this. So the decades come to an end. We'll see what goes on next in the WWE and wrestling in general, and AEW and New Japan. You have Wrestle Kingdom, which I'll review in a few days. And I'm looking forward to some stuff. Looking forward to a lot of stuff. Hopefully the 2020s are a better decade than the 2010s. 2010s were not great. The 2020s, hopefully, were a better decade. So, there was some stuff that was memorable. It was a fun decade overall. I enjoy wrestling. I always enjoy it. The wrestling is good. The storylines are not the greatest, but again, I just hopefully we get great stuff. Hopefully we get a good decade in the 2020s, and this is it. I'm officially signing off on the 2010s. 2019's over. 2020 starts. A new decade starts, and here's to a great 10 years of wrestling.